Happy Boxing Day, Jamaica. I hope you had a Merry Christmas yesterday with your family and friends and are ready to continue the festivities today and tomorrow. Yes, I said tomorrow. This is because Boxing Day will be observed tomorrow on the 27th as a public holiday. It is said that Boxing Day originated in Britain during the Middle Ages and got its name from the fact that on the day after Christmas, servants would receive gift boxes of food or money from their masters as a token of appreciation for working on Christmas Day. The servants were also given the day off, which could account for why it came to be observed as a holiday. Today, for most of us, it's just another day to continue the holiday celebrations and be merry. Welcome to another edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm Theodore Henry. Stay tuned.
Do you know what a disability is? A permanent loss of function in any part of your body is called a disability. Some people are born that way. Others get a disability because of an illness or an accident. This doesn't have to prevent you from living a full life. The Disabilities Act will protect your right to work, raise families, or do business like anyone else. Visit jcpdja.com. A message from the JCPD, an agency of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security.
Dealing with the loss of a loved one or friend at any time is hard enough already. Add to that the impact of COVID-19 that can sometimes lead to an unexpected death. If you've lost someone this year due to the coronavirus, we empathize with you. And to further show our support during the holiday period, we're being joined by Dr. Jeffrey Walcott, consultant psychiatrist. He'll be providing helpful tips on dealing with this loss and our mental health.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm your host, Rose Campbell. Now, today we'll be talking with consultant psychiatrist Dr. Jeffrey Walcott on how to cope with the loss of a loved one, especially at this time of the year. Dr. Walcott, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so many persons this year will be facing the festive season without a loved one. Many persons, maybe through accidents or COVID-19 or other causes, but people are not able to cope, Tell us, first, explain the impact of the death of a loved one.
Well, you see, most persons experience loss differently,
Yes.
but there are commonalities. But I think one of the most important things for us to recognize is that dealing with grief is a normal human experience. It's something that we have to go through. It's inevitable, and it's not a pathology. In saying that, however, we recognize that it is painful and can be immensely painful for persons who are experiencing, depending on how close they are to the person that they have lost. And so there's been a sort of framework that has been developed to identify the emotional states that persons go through. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had developed a pattern of grief that we see. And initially what you see early in the loss is the business of denial. Persons end up in shock because you can't process it at the immediate impact of the event. And then persons go through feelings of anger, you go through stages of bargaining, and then eventually you then start to have the feelings of depression and finally acceptance. Mm-hmm. And those steps are not clear or linear. In other words, people can go through various stages at various times, and there's no time limit. So each person is different, but what you require during those stages remains somewhat similar. People need information, they need connection, they need support, emotional support, and at the end, they need guidance and some amount of direction as to how to get their lives to move on while incorporating the loss that they've gone through.
Yes. What kind of information you're talking about
when
here?
You talk about persons having to deal with the shock, it's important for you to engage with them and to actually help them to process the events of what's been happening. You think of a sudden loss, for example, COVID-19, immediately persons start to question what's happened in the hospital, what happened with the person, what's going on. And it's important for you, even though the questions may seem difficult or intrusive, it's important to take the time and follow through and answer the questions of the persons that are grieving, because it allows them to move beyond the stage of shock and denial that they're going through. And we have to spend time talking to people. I think that's the most critical thing.
That's important, yes. So would the impact be different depending on the age of the person?
It does, and depending on the experience. Persons who have dealt with loss before tend to be more resilient. Resiliency is a trait, not a character trait, but it's a learned process that we develop over time. The more difficulties we go through, the more adversities, the stronger we are at dealing with future events. And so persons will vary based on experience, based on age, based on stage of development and psychological strengths. So it tends to be different with each person, but some of the commonalities are they all need support. They all need a shoulder or a listening ear, and we all need a supportive community around us when we go through these.
So it's not true that children will deal with it better than probably an older person, not a middle-aged person, but a much older person.
Not necessarily. I mean, the issue with children is that their processing of it might be different because they may not understand or be able to conceptualize the issues as they are for an adult. But it still has lasting effects, and in some cases the effects that you see in children could be far worse because it can then manifest itself in the later years. And so it's important for us, while we recognize it, to not exclude or to dismiss the experience that anyone is going through when it comes to dealing with pain and suffering.
Right. Talk to us about some of what we should look out for, the signs that we would see and the kind of behavior in persons who are going through this kind of grief.
I think one of the important hallmarks or triggers for the intervention process is withdrawal. Persons who are going through any form of psychological pain or suffering will have a normal tendency to withdraw, and that's the wrong and counterproductive thing to do, because at this stage is when you actually need to have the support of persons around you, not necessarily to discuss what's happened, but just to be there, just to be in a safe space with persons that are supportive, that are sharing in the grief. And that's why when you look at how almost every culture deals with the process of loss, the actual rituals are quite similar. It has to do with coming together of communities, coming together of families, because we know that those things are impactful in allowing persons to process the loss and the trauma in a healthy way. And so it's important to recognize and counter when persons are trying to isolate or withdraw and offer them help.
Right, so we don't necessarily need to try to get them out.
Not necessarily, just to be there and just to check up on them. Even if they sometimes don't want you to call or don't want to say, still do it. Give them the option or the opportunity to engage with persons once they're going through this pain and not to go through it alone.
Okay, so what other signs can we look with? So there's withdrawal, are there any kind of other signs?
And I think what a delineation is to identify when clinical or significant impairment has occurred where we'll need professional help. And I think that's where I alluded to. But the issue is once you have changes in your sleep patterns, your appetite, physiological changes. In other words, you're being impaired now. First physically and then psychologically, not able to perform at work, not able to do your normal daily routine. And then that may be a need for some level of professional intervention. But it's important to understand because most people view psychiatric care or psychological care as an intrusion or as somewhat of a forced entity, but it's really not. We're here to help and to provide support as much as you need.
Okay, we're going to be coming back to talk more about that, the intervention. So we're going to take a break now. This is an important conversation, and we're talking about mental health, dealing with grief, and what we need to do if that stays with us for too long. We'll come back in a short while. Stay with us. Welcome back to Get the Facts. Our discussion continues on how to cope with the loss of a loved one, especially at this time, with our consultant psychiatrist, Dr. Jeffrey Walcott. All right, so we're talking about interventions. At what point should two persons actually go get help, professional help?
Well, there's a short answer to that. And the short answer is if they feel the need or if the family has a concern, you should seek help. Because if it's not needed, we will just guide you along that process. But if it is needed, it's better to err on the side of caution. But there are specific things. Once you have any impairment in your physiological functioning, by that I mean any changes in sleep, appetite, that's impacting your day-to-day functioning, as well as your inability to now do what you would normally be responsible for doing. So any form of impairment would necessitate getting some level of professional help, difficulty in processing grief, intense distress. If you feel that you cannot cope, it may be prudent to seek professional help. And remember, as I said, we are here to provide help and support, not necessarily to provide medication and forced treatment, which tends to be the stigma for psychiatry and mental health services. So we are here to help, and it doesn't matter. As long as you're having difficulty and you think you need it, we will help you.
So but about how long, though, should a person be grieving for?
There is absolutely no way of telling that. But in essence, the process should not be impacting your functionality for greater than probably a 2 or 3 week period. And if it continues to impact your functionality beyond that point, you need assistance to maneuver the channels of grieving that you're going through and to actually help you. And in some instances, because when you talk about what is to be done, our main focus in the beginning is just to establish a place of safety for you to be able to process. And that can be psychological, emotional, or even guiding you towards physical safety, because in some instances, the grief or the loss may be associated with danger. So it's establishing safety is one of the primary areas that we focus on in the therapeutic relationship first. And then we guide the client through the different stages of grief that they have to go through. And finally, to a stage of acceptance and understanding that having gone through this, you're never going to be the same, but you're going to be able to carry on.
Right. What are some of the things we can do? Say my mother died, my mother has died. My mother died and I just not getting over it. And people recommend that you try to write her a note or you try to go to the grave to talk to her. What are some of the things you recommend?
There are some techniques that we utilize, and I think it tends to be very specific for the different persons, because it depends on the relationship that you had and what are the things that you are having hung up about. Is it unresolved issues that we help you to explore? Is it feelings of anger that you feel guilty about, so therefore you're not processing the anger itself? So there are several reasons why you get stuck in the grief cycle, and part of the process of the therapeutic intervention is about getting you first of all to a level of insight and understanding, which means that you have to identify the exact place that you are, the emotion that you're struggling with, and then we guide you through the processing of that emotion. And it could be any one of them. It could be the emotion of the shock, because we still have persons now who are in shock and denial about the loss of normality in our lives and not accepting it. Or it could be the anger that you're stuck in. And anger tends to be a very tricky emotion, because people get the feeling that they don't have the right to be angry because they feel guilty about being angry, especially being angry with the person because they are no longer here. But this is a normal emotion, and it helps for you to process it and to accept it and to move beyond it.
Right. So where do we go to get help?
So one of the interesting things about our country as it stands now, most, if not all, the public health facilities have mental health services attached to them in the nearest community clinic that you can have. And there's a plethora of both private and public entities that provide psychiatric and psychological services. And the Ministry of Health actually has several helplines that they have created to be able to direct persons to access psychotherapeutic or supportive psychotherapeutic services and mental health services all across the island. So all you need to do is to reach out to one of your health facilities or even your private practitioner, and they can guide you to accessing mental health care, both in the public and private sector.
And this is, you can actually go directly to the accident and emergency
You can
section.
go to the casualty department or the health center, which is
Yes.
usually closest to you. And the health center, if they don't have a clinic on that day, they can give you the list of where you can access it, or the numbers that you can call in terms of persons struggling with psychological pain and suffering.
Right. What is the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist?
All right, so psychiatry is a medical discipline that is focused on the behavior, thoughts, and emotions. Psychology is social sciences and focuses more on behavioral transformation. And so it is quite similar in terms of the long-term impact that we have on the patient. But psychiatrists deal with the pathology element in terms of focusing on the clinical aspect, which shorter terms, we also are able to prescribe medication, but we do everything as well in terms of psychological support, social interventions. But the psychologist really focuses on the behavioral transformation.
Okay. So people are going to be sad naturally at Christmas because they have lost their loved one. What would you tell them?
I think one of the most important things is to set up a system or a schedule of activities that actually help to counter the feelings of sadness. And this sounds cliche, but the reality is that exercise is very good. And we have studies, empirical data, that have shown that physical activity is as efficacious as most antidepressant medication in terms of dealing with moderate or mild depression. Socialization is another critical factor, because engaging in a conversation, just being in the presence of other persons, helps to create a biochemical reaction in your brain that gives you a feel-good sensation. So these are important, very simple things that can be done that have a significant impact on your mood and on your way of processing sadness.
Yes, exercise is crucial. So people, I know some persons now don't want to go to the hospitals because people around them say, you're crazy. I want you to talk to those people. How people who respond negatively to mental illness.
Well, that's the first issue is that you have to go to a hospital. That's not true.
Yes, right.
You can access mental health care in most of your health centers in the same setting that you go to check your blood pressure, check your hypertension, your blood sugar, and in a private doctor's office. And so the concept that it is in a restrictive environment is one of the things that we have to move away from.
Yes.
It can be a simple conversation. There's a wonderful program actually that a dear friend of mine from Zimbabwe actually has been using to actually train elder grandmothers to deliver mental health intervention for persons suffering with depression on a bench. So you see that the concept of getting mental health help is not something that you would think of having to do with a hospital or a hospital bed, but it can be done anywhere. And so we have to move our thoughts out of that restrictive setting and then move our thoughts out of what we think it is. It is not something that is forced on you. It is something that is done to help you based on what your needs are, and we work with you.
Yes,
in most cases.
Yes. This has been Get the Facts, and we were talking about dealing with grief, especially at this time. And we want to remind you that exercise is important and that you may get help at the clinic in your community. So do not be afraid to go to the clinic. We were talking to Dr. Jeffrey Walcott, and he's a consultant psychiatrist. Thank you so very much for watching, and we see you next time when we have another interesting program. I'm Rose Campbell. Take good care.
Curfew hours have been relaxed, which gives us more outside time during this festive season. We are now able to visit and spend longer times with our loved ones and friends and bring back the vibes this holiday season. Remember, while you're doing all this, to be safe on the roads and follow all the necessary COVID-19 protocols.
Our island is home to about 10 lighthouses, and this is one of them. The Lover's Leap Lighthouse, which stands 1,600 feet above sea level, is located in what once was the largest parish in Jamaica. Today, we're going on an exciting excursion to explore the Breadbasket Parish, starting right here at Lover's Leap. Welcome to St. Elizabeth.
In the 18th century, Lover's Leap, there was a plantation, and there were slaves working on that plantation. And you had, how it got its name was that there were two lovers, Tunky and Mizzy, who fell in love. And the slave master really wanted Mizzy for himself. And those two lovers they found out that they wanted to separate them both. And they decided that before they got separated, they ran away. And they found themselves at this cliff, which is 1,700 feet above sea level. And they just decided to jump. They rather die than be separated. So January 2018, Jakes took over the management of Lover's Leap. And today we have a full restaurant and bar. Every day we do offer a tour of the grounds, giving the story of the two lovers. We're also looking into having a guided tour down to the bottom of the cliff and back up, which can take you maybe about 3.5 hours for the entire tour.
Crocodiles are one of Jamaica's endangered species and one of the oldest animals in the world. Here at the Black River Safari, you can not only learn more about the crocodiles, but it is said that you can get a little up close and personal with these amazing animals.
Presently, we're on the Black River, and this is Jamaica's longest navigable river. It is 44 miles long, about 70 kilometers. As you can see, it's smiling, showing off those 68 teeth, 38 at the top and 30 at the bottom, which is very sharp enough to rip through both flesh and bones. So throughout the crocodile's lifetime, they will relocate themselves for a source of food, for mating, or if they're just being bullied by a more bigger and a more aggressive crocodile. This is Christian. This is one of the male crocodile that we have released from our nursery. Don't run. Yeah. In total, so far from that facility, we have released actually 118 crocodiles now.
So we are getting a little bit of rain out here in the safari, but it's still an amazing experience.
On land, the crocodile can do a top speed of up to 50 kilometers an hour, but only for a short distance. They get tired easily. In the water, they swim pretty fast as well. So you would not be able to outrun or to outswim one, which you don't have to do. You only need to move faster than the person next to you. Well, that's the easier way.
I legit feel like a daredevil after this experience. However, if this isn't for you, I am sure our next stop has something for the entire family.
It's relaxing, and you can just sit and what you like. You like lions, you like birds, you like monkeys, what you like. We attract visitors from all over the world. When I say all over the world, name it. And it is very interactive, as you saw today, where the kids having a lot of fun. And I chose St. Elizabeth because of the location. It's actually in the center of Jamaica, where it's easy for the persons from Montego Bay to access, persons from Kingston, and even from like Otrius. Outside of that, the habitats, as you can see, a lot of trees. It's like country. It's like, you know, it's right for the animals.
We've been on the road all day, learning, touring, and exploring, simply having a blast. And I bet you're wondering where to next. Just be patient. Let me enjoy my coconut from Miss Sharon right here in Holland Bamboo. We'll soon reach. St. Elizabeth has many secrets, and this is one of them. The Breadnote Valley Estate, which spans over 76 acres, is home to 7 natural falls created by this river, which flows from the Cockpit country through to the Black River. The estate is located right between Newton and Magotty here in St. Elizabeth. As the sun sets on an immaculate day, I'm here surrounded by a pristine coastline. Our journey today ends here at Floyd's Pelican Bar, which is situated about a mile or so off the south coast. Good vibes, good people, and an awesome structure.
I'm from St. Elizabeth and I think it's the best. So on the Pelican Bar located in it, this is a very nice attraction since year 2001. And I think it's a one-of-a-lifetime experience and a visit to come over and see what it's like. And we're located in southwest St. Elizabeth in a fishing village called Pelican.
There's somewhere here in St. Elizabeth for everyone, so just take a turn off round the bend and have some fun.
Encourage those around you who have not gotten their vaccine to get it. We all need to be protected for each of us to feel protected. It's a one for all for one type of scenario. Don't use the side effects to discourage others. Because I've had the vaccine myself. It is your body building the protection against the virus. And so interpret the side effects as a positive thing. Don't use the side effects to not take the second dose. To achieve the full protection, you need the second dose.
This is where the magazine ends for today, but if you would like to see more content like this, then visit our YouTube page. We also have all the latest news and updates on our social media pages and on our website, which you can find at jis.gov.jm. So on behalf of the entire production crew, I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.